Hey guys, Dr. Shook here. I hope you're doing well today. And I have a really special whiteboard presentation for you guys today because I see that there are lots of people that ask us questions that are oftentimes related to a particular piece of the bigger story of why you might not feel well, even though your hormone levels are normal according to your lab ranges, or even though you're taking medications for problems, why you don't still feel well. And people, they read or they hear one of my presentations that may talk about one piece of the puzzle. But what happens is when you focus on just one piece of a potential problem that's affecting your bodily function, you end up having an incomplete strategy to really support the whole picture. And the whole picture can be supported, and it should be supported. But this is a really important presentation I want to give you guys today because it helps you to better understand the multiple aspects of and the complexity of the problem. Let's put it that way, and it will give you some perspective on how to approach this rather than focusing on one thing in particular. Because it's not my experience that we've ever found just one thing that made someone not feel well, have autoimmunity. It's never just one thing. There are always layers to it. So you have to work on all those layers at one time. The first thing, though, is that you have to understand the problem. You have to understand more of the complexity of the problem, because it can be very frustrating for you as an individual if you think that there's just this one thing that you're going to find. You find that that's contributing to your problems. You find one problem, you fixate on it, you work on it, you don't get better, you still don't feel well, and you become frustrated. Guys, you need to be more aware of this complete picture, and you need to understand that your strategy to getting your body well, to improving your immune system, to improving your thyroid hormone physiology it has to address the whole person. Okay, so a lot of the stuff we're getting ready to talk about is describing and helping you to better understand what this whole person strategy and perspective needs to be if you're going to improve your health. Especially if you're taking medications already and you still don't feel well, or if your labs are normal but you still don't feel well. There's something else going on, and this is what you need to be aware of. Okay, so we need to start with awareness. So we're going to look at multiple things that affect thyroid hormone physiology. So focus on the center of the whiteboard. Here's your thyroid. The thyroid primarily makes T4 hormone. That's the primary hormone made by your thyroid. 93% of your hormone is T4. T4 gets converted in the body to T3, which is the primary hormone that you want to stimulate the cells of your body so that they drive your metabolism and give you all the benefits of the thyroid. Now the T4 is also converted into reverse T3. Reverse T3 and T3 are normal to be found in the body, but they need to be in balance for one thing. And T3, what it does is it attaches itself to the cells of your body. Every single cell in your body has receptors for the thyroid hormone. It attaches itself and it stimulates the metabolism of the cell. So this represents a small receptor, which is the outside of the cell, which is what the hormone attaches to stimulate the metabolism. Now, reverse T3 attaches to the exact same receptor. And the thing is that reverse T3 is primarily very, very low activity, or we could almost call it inactive. It's more like the brake for your thyroid. The T3 is more like the gas pedal, right? It revs it up, it drives the metabolism. The reverse T3 is like the brake. So obviously this has to be in balance. If you have too much reverse T3, it could block T3 and really decrease cellular metabolism and create a lot of the symptoms that you're trying to most people are trying to improve, right? Fatigue, brain fog, low metabolism, all the issues that tend to come with hypothyroidism and hypothyroid symptoms. So this is the basic, most basic boiled down process. Thyroid makes T4 the primary hormone. It gets converted into reverse T3 and T3. T3 is the gas pedal. It's the hormone that attaches to the cell, stimulates the physiology. Reverse T3 is the brake. If you have too much reverse T3, it will bind here and block the T3, and it will slow down everything, and it can cause you to not feel well, even if these other hormones are normal, okay? So let's look at some factors that affect this, okay? So let's start with the problems and this is also simplified over here, the things that affect and decrease this process. So let's start with factors that decrease thyroid hormone production. So this would be T4, okay, primarily T4 production. What decreased T4 production? Stress decreases T4 production, and these are chemical stresses, physical stresses, and emotional stresses. They all drive an inflammatory response. They all change your sympathetic nervous system and put you in fight or flight mode, which causes a shift in your stress hormone production, right? It raises cortisol, raises a lot of the catecholamine production, and that is known to inhibit and decrease this output. So you have to address stressors, okay? You have to address stressors. That doesn't mean I just feel stressed to the world. That's one form of stress. Physical pain and aching and hurting all the time drives the same kind of stress response. And then having chemical inflammation due to infections, trauma, radiation, and certain medications drive chemical inflammation that also produce a stress response, drive up the cortisol, the catecholamines, and can inhibit this, okay? Now, which means decrease it, right? Fluoride. Fluoride competes with iodine. Iodine is required to produce your T4. Toxins, pesticides, mercury, cadmium, which is a heavy metal, lead, all these things inhibit T4 production. Has anyone checked you for all these things? When you go in and you don't feel well, and what is done? Let me guess. A discussion is made, a physical exam is probably done to some degree, and then there is usually some labs are ordered. The labs come back and they're looking at thyroid and complete blood count and a few things, and they look at the TSH, and let's say your TSH is okay, or let's even say it's TSH is high, which suggests that thyroid output's low. Well, they look at this, and either way, they might recommend a thyroid hormone replacement. But do you think that looking at TSH, which doesn't look at any of these factors directly, right? It doesn't look at any of these factors directly. Are you okay with that? I mean, is that the standard that you want? Is that what you want done? I mean, is that adequate for you? Do you feel that is going far enough into the investigative process? I'm going to tell you, your doctors mean well. They absolutely mean well, but these things, even an autoimmune disease like Hashimoto's decreases output. So if these things aren't looked at, in my opinion, it's not a thorough enough investigation to look at the problems that cause you to have low thyroid symptoms. So if you're continuing to struggle, though your labs are normal, or you're on medication and you still don't feel well, if this has not been looked at thoroughly, then you have not been investigated. Your health has not been investigated to the degree that it needs to be to determine what is driving the problems. Okay? I mean, this is a really important point. You've got to understand that there are multiple factors that break down the chemistry here. Okay? Step one. Step two, there are multiple points that this process can break down. So factors that increase the conversion of T4 into reverse T3. Remember, reverse T3 is the brake, T3 is the gas pedal. If we have too much reverse T3, it will block the stimulating hormone, and we'll still have hypothyroid symptoms, even if T3 is normal, even if T4 is normal, even if TSH is normal. Labs are normal, but I don't feel well, right? So just one of many ways that this can occur. So, things that increase T4 to reverse T3 conversion. Stress. Remember, chemical stressors, physical pain, and emotional stressors. They all stimulate part of your involuntary nervous system called the sympathetic nervous system. Your fight or flight mechanism produces catecholamines and stress cortisol hormones that inhibit and break this down and cause disconversion, higher reverse T3, okay, stress. So if you don't address infections, chemicals in your environment that like heavy metals and toxins, things that are stimulating a stress response. If you don't investigate these things and look to find the source, then how are you ever going to address the problem? Really? I mean, you've got to investigate the driving factors. So inflammation, high inflammation. Is anyone checking your C-reactive protein, your homocysteine? If you're autoimmune, have they actively worked to dampen the drivers of the autoimmune process? All these things that we're talking about here could be said to contribute to the autoimmunity. If they haven't, then you're going to have high levels of inflammation. You're going to have higher cytokine loads, which are proteins produced by the immune system that are involved with autoimmunity. They're inflammatory, that will disrupt this and that will produce increased reverse T3. What about toxins? We talked about toxins. Infections, we talked about infections. Do you notice liver and kidney dysfunction will affect this too. Nutrient deficiencies, some medications will cause this to occur. Do you notice how many similarities there are between things that decrease production and that also cause problems with reverse T3 overproduction? Do you notice the similarities? Because a lot of the underlying drivers of these problems are similar. Okay? So these are a lot of the very common problems that we see affecting thyroid hormone physiology and how your body functions. Now, let's look at the things that are required for this to work properly, not just these things that break it down. Right? Let's look at some of the nutrient needs for this process to work properly. So, required for proper function, for proper thyroid production of T4, your primary hormone, you have to have adequate iron. You cannot be iron deficient. Do you know, probably, 1 out of 10, or probably more frequent than that, 1 out of every 5 people I see, they have a need for iron. And a lot of times they don't even know it. So if your doctor's not casting a really wide net, and guys, they are upholding their standard of care and they're doing everything they can for you. You can't ask them, they cannot order a lot of advanced testing for you and things that are outside of the guidelines that they have imposed upon them. Or there's a lot of risk for them. There's a lot of risk. So that's why a lot of people aren't aware of their iron status or need. You can't be deficient in iodine, but you've got to be very careful with iodine. If you overdo iodine, it can promote autoimmunity. It can drive inflammation. So you have to be careful with iodine. But iron, iodine, tyrosine, zinc, selenium, vitamin E, B2, B3, B6, C, and D are all required for T4 production. Now, you can't just go take a bunch of these things. Sometimes people will get these thyroid support formulas, right? They'll show me herbs that they have, and guess what they have in them? They just have all this stuff in there. They just put it all in there, and guess what? You don't take all this stuff. You don't necessarily go take a bunch of iodine. You don't take tyrosine, because see, tyrosine, you want tyrosine in your diet, but you don't necessarily want to take this because it might make you feel better, but guess why? Because it will stimulate epinephrine and it will stimulate epinephrine or adrenaline production by the adrenal glands. When you pump out more adrenaline, do you feel more energized? Do you think that you might mistake overproduction of adrenaline for better thyroid function and higher metabolism? Yeah, because they're both somewhat energizing, right? They both energize you. So you might think you're taking excessive tyrosine, but guess what? It's not that it's helping the thyroid. It may be that it's stimulating an overproduction of adrenaline, and it's something that you've got to be careful about. It's not just, hey, because these are needed, I need to take them all. That's not the case at all. That's not the case at all. These are things that are needed, but you don't necessarily just want to go grab a bunch of these things and start taking them and think that that's the answer. You've got to look, if these problems are occurring, this is going to be futile and this could actually be problematic. And it could be confusing for you as well because you might think it's helping when in reality, if you used tyrosine and it produced more adrenaline, cortisol gets made with adrenaline by the adrenal glands. They sit on top of the kidneys. Excessive cortisol will break down this physiology because it is stress. Cortisol produces is associated with the stress response. Okay, essentially you're driving the same hormones with excessive tyrosine that you're driving with all these stress responses that we discussed. So it has to be balanced. It has to be specific. It has to be precise for you. So that's one thing. These are things that are required as far as nutrients go, vitamins and minerals to produce T4. Now, what do you do if you have normal T4 but the T3 is lower? Well, there's probably a problem with conversion, right? So the problem though is going to be here, right? It's these things, stress. What's causing this disconversion? Well, nutrient needs, selenium and zinc are very important to have proper conversion here. I'll say also, iron is very important. This conversion process, for it to occur, selenium and zinc are minerals that have to be there. Now, when you're looking at this problem though, you have to consider these driving factors. You've got to look at the stressors that we talked about, all these things that we talked about. Now, there's another part to this. Even if all of this is working properly, T4 is normal, your hormone quantities are normal, how does the cell respond? How can the cell respond to these hormones? Because it has to be sensitive to these hormones. So some of the things that can occur here is that you have decreased sensitivity of the receptor. Now, I'm going to tell you that inflammation decreases receptor sensitivity. Vitamin A deficiencies, zinc deficiencies decrease receptor sensitivity. Poor fatty acids, so essential fatty acids, poor omega-3 health, eating the wrong types of fats will create problems with the cell membrane to where it's not as sensitive, the receptors aren't as efficient. So you're looking at things to improve this response. Vitamin A, exercise, zinc, and I would even say essential fatty acids are critical for proper receptor stimulation. But if you have these other factors at play here, if you have stress, inflammation, high cortisol, you have some other problems that are going on, they will blunt and decrease the sensitivity of the cell. Guys, this is a much more accurate representation of the process that has to be optimized. If you are taking medications and do not feel well, it's not, those medications are probably helping you, but there are other physiological processes that need to be evaluated. I see this all the time. And it's, I teach it so much, and I talk about this probably, I teach every single day. I do videos like this, live streams with you guys, and I teach it every single day. And I can't say it enough to people because there's so much confusion. So guys, this is something, please, I hope you take this information and you at least recognize these problems because you have to address all of this stuff. You really need further investigation into these areas. That's the best approach. There are ways to, I've worked with so many people that I know systems that we can apply with people, dietary and lifestyle-based approaches that can address a lot of these problems pretty effectively. There are some people though that that's more of an educated trial and error approach, applying a system that I'm familiar with to this without a lot of testing. But some people still won't get better. And a lot of people, if you really want to get better quickly, you have to do specific testing to put together a very clear picture of what's going on and apply a very precise plan to support the problems that you see so that this can be optimized, okay? So guys, I want to share this with you. I hope this helps you to better understand these problems. If you have questions, please let us know. If you need help, please reach out to us. Post the comments below if you have questions, and we will do everything we can to help support you. Guys, I appreciate you so much. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I'll talk to you again very, very soon. Thanks.